Hare Krishna, Ujjwala Prabhu. You okay?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Nice
Is
to see you.
Bhavani Harmony being good?
Relatively.
Yeah.
She's pretty good. I'm peeking.
I have to hear from him, not from you. It's good
Fun.
to see you guys again.
Good to see you.
likewise for you.
Looks
Really
like
good.
we may have to maybe be able to go back to India pretty soon. We're going to apply today or tomorrow online for online visas.
Fantastic.
And see what happens.
We'll send some prayers for whatever they're worth, that it goes through smoothly.
Yeah, there's a lot of things we want to be there for, including Anupani's wedding and
Yeah.
Radharani's Yatra, which is on the 15th of November. And we go over to the retreat after Anupani's wedding, and then Gandhira Maharaj's Yatra after that. And that's Krishna Kunj on
Yeah, we're going to go on October 20th to Govardhan and then stay through February 2nd.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Wow, till February 2nd. That's quite a good program.
Yeah, everything came together in the right way. Giriraj arranged things, so it's going to work out nicely.
Could you kindly repeat the dates?
October 20th to February 2nd.
Wow, nice.
Yeah. We're excited.
You can inform the police about that, Krishna Kunj.
Yeah, sure. I do that. If they ever let us back in.
I don't know what's going on. Chaitanya Prabhu said he's coming. He's got some problems. We have a new friend, Yashoda Pavani. She's not able to come online. And really devotees. Maybe we should just go ahead and start. Keep going. We have a big topic today. What time is it for you guys there in America?
It's noon right now, middle of the day.
Not so hard for you. Not so bad here. It's 10 after 6 right now here in the evening. So, but I don't want to stay up too late tonight. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start recording this. Ganyagani go to Golodu Haram. Go run the Buddha Tamago Pyatako Pabrikshan. Gopalagada Vetidam. Yeti Singha Gora Govinda Deshi Kavaram Satatam Namah. Dhamma Adama Kichuna Bachila Chachiya Dileka Kola Kahe Premananda Hemona Goranga Vridoya Dariya Bola Jagoranga Kaha Goranga Laha Goranga Namapre Jejana Goranga Baje se hoya mara pran re Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Yashaiva Padambu Bhakti Labhya Prema Vidana Padama Pumata Tasmai Jagan Mangala Mangalaya Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Madgavirapi Gopala Sri Kriyat Kripaya Jari Tadaiva Sambhaya Pitva Rishi Yustat Priyajanaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Sasanatana Rupaka Gopala Raghunatapta Gajaba Pahiman Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya cha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Nice to see everybody here today. Hare Krishna. Krishna Arjun Bankala. You look a little funny. You look like somebody that I've seen before. Hare Krishna Siddhara. So we're on our 12th session that we're calling Mahaprabhu's Bhajan and the Gambhira. And as we've been going along, we spoke about different aspects of the Gambhira, how is Kashi Mishra's house, who is Kashi Mishra, what does he have to do with Mahaprabhu. We spoke something before about the physical elements of the Gambhira, how there's different walls there and how big the rooms are and things based on some different statements in Shastra. And then about 6 sessions ago, we started speaking about Mahaprabhu's pastimes in the Gambhira. And in particular, we're speaking about different devotees. In session 10, we spoke about Ramachandra Puri and what Ramachandra Puri adds to Mahaprabhu's pastimes in the Gambhira. In our last session, we spoke about Mahaprabhu's devotee Govinda and what Govinda added to it, and how Ramachandra Puri represents criticism, which will come in line of your bhajan, and Govinda represents persons who are like your godbrothers who want to give you instruction. And in both cases, we see how Mahaprabhu ideally dealt with them to teach us, to relish himself, but also to teach us what it means to do Gambhira Bhajan. And so today's session, we want to speak something about Jagadananda Pandit and what Jagadananda Pandit contributes to Mahaprabhu's pastimes. And he contributes this mood of renunciation in the Gambhira. So Jagadananda, he was very devoted to Mahaprabhu. He was like a loving, chaste wife to her husband. And out of his ecstatic love for Mahaprabhu, sometimes Jagadananda couldn't remember that Mahaprabhu was manifesting some pastimes of taking sannyas, and he had some obligations to scriptural rules and regulations, or his purpose of teaching spiritual things to the world. Jagadananda Pandit was just always very, very conscious about Mahaprabhu's divine body and how it might be hurt, how it might be inconvenienced. And if Mahaprabhu didn't act according to his will, he became very upset, like an offended wife. And we're going to study a little bit about Jagadananda Pandit's ontological position. I hope we get that far today. That'll be at the end. He served Mahaprabhu like Satyabhama served Krishna. And sometimes devotees say that Jagadananda is Satyabhama. And that's a little confusing, especially in line of what Rupa Goswami says about Satyabhama, that Satyabhama was Radharani. We'll explore that a little bit. Jagadananda Pandit, his purpose was to please Mahaprabhu, but Mahaprabhu was acting like a sannyasi, and to accept Jagadananda's service might violate different scriptural prohibitions or create some obstacle in Mahaprabhu's path of preaching to people. And for this reason, Mahaprabhu refused many requests of Jagadananda to honor the standards of sannyas. And in his book, Gambhiraya Sri Gauranga, which we're following a little bit, Vasik Mohan Vidyabhushan, associate of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, we're just getting his book translated now. And I'm kind of using this as kind of a framework for what we're doing, but I'm filling it in a whole lot, especially today, with my own inspiration, what I see. But he comments that the kind of conduct that Mahaprabhu showed, where in the Gambhira with Jagadananda Pandit is required to attain Braj Ras. And we hear in the Chaitanya Charitamrita how Jagadananda, once he went to Navadvip and he visited different devotees there. And the Chaitanya Charitamrita describes that Chaitanya Marma Katha Sunetanya Mukhe Apana Pasare Shabe Chaitanya Katha Shuke. That they heard this very confidential, this Marma Katha, Chaitanya Marma Katha, this confidential topics about Mahaprabhu from Jagadananda Pandit, and they became completely ecstatic. And hearing this about Mahaprabhu's pastimes, they completely forgot themselves. And Jagadananda Pandit described in this way, he would go to different devotees' homes, and wherever home he went to, he would just speak to them about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's behavior in Jagannath Puri. And when the devotees heard this, they were all feeling great pangs of separation. They forgot all about their suffering, and they became very, very ecstatic. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says, Chaitanya Prema Patra, that Jagadananda Pandit is Chaitanya Prema Patra. He's the pot of ecstatic love for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Jagadananda Danya, he has so much good fortune. Jari Mile Shrimani Pailun Chaitanya. Anybody who saw or met with Jagadananda Pandit, Jari Mile, who met with him, they thought to themselves, now I've met with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu directly. So one day, Jagadananda Pandit, he came to the house of Shivananda Sain. And Shivananda was a Vaidya, an Ayurvedic doctor by his caste. And he was always producing different herbs and ointments and things in his house. And at the same time, Jagadananda Pandit, he's always absorbed in thinking about the service of Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu was completely lost in Krishna Prema. He didn't have any appetite for food. And Jagadananda Pandit, he just took it for granted. Well, because Mahaprabhu is not eating, then he must not be sleeping very properly either. And his Vaya and Pitta are getting disturbed. And therefore, Jagadananda Pandit collected some very special, expensive sandalwood oil for Mahaprabhu. And very carefully, you can imagine, sometimes we travel with some oil. It's very, very difficult in a nice bottle. And he was carrying it in a clay pot. So he brought that oil back to Jagannath Puri and he gave it to Govinda Das to use for Mahaprabhu. And Govinda, he came to Mahaprabhu one day and told him about this request of Jagadananda Pandit. And Mahaprabhu said, hey, I'm a sannyasi. I can't do that. I don't use oil. He said, aside from that, Prabhu kahe sanyasura nahi taili adhikar, tahate sugandhi taila paramadhikara. A sannyasi shouldn't use oil. And what to speak, this sugandha taila, this perfumed oil. So get it out of here right now. And he told them that you should take this oil to the temple of Jagannath, because Jagadananda Pandit, he's made it with some devotion, and they can burn it in the lamps in the Jagannath Mandir. And then Tara Parishram Haibe Parama Safale, the hard work, the Parishram of Jagadananda Pandit, it'll be successful. So Govinda Das didn't say anything. Bhajan Goswami says that he was quiet, probably because he knew the mood of Jagadananda Pandit. So he went to Jagadananda and he said that, I'm sorry, your wish, your desire is not fulfilled. And Mahaprabhu said that he's a sannyasi, so oil's forbidden for him. And Jagadananda, then he became sad. He carried that pot of oil all the way from Mayapur to Jagannath Puri from Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu refused it. So Jagadananda Pandit's face became pale and tears came to his eyes. And he didn't say anything. Govinda was sad for Jagadananda, but he knew that Mahaprabhu was very, very strict, so he couldn't say anything about it. And so Govinda didn't mention it for some days. But seeing the emotional state of Jagadananda Pandit, how he was wounded by this and how he was feeling so much pain, that pain also permeated the heart and mind of Govinda. So after 10 days, Govinda came to Mahaprabhu with a little bit of that oil. And he said that Jagadananda Pandit has this desire that you accept this oil, but out of lack of courage, he couldn't tell you directly. And then Mahaprabhu became angry. And he said, what is this? Next, he's going to want me to have a masseur to give me massage every day. And people, they're going to smell this oil on my body, and they're going to think, what kind of sannyasi is this? He's got some cologne on. They'll think me a Dari sannyasi, and they're going to criticize me. So then Mahaprabhu, Govinda went to Jagadananda, and he's told him everything. And Jagadananda just became more hurt. And the next day, Jagadananda came to Mahaprabhu, and Mahaprabhu started speaking to him. They said, Jagadananda, you brought this oil all the way from me, but I'm a sannyasi. I can't do this. I can't accept this. So you should give it to the temple for Jagannath, and they can light their lamps with it. And Jagadananda, then he said, what oil? There's no oil. And he took the pot and smashed it on the ground. And then he went back to his house, which is there in Jagannath Puri. We often visit. It's near Haridas Thakur's Samadhi. And he locked the door on the inside and just laid down on the bed. And for 3 days, he didn't eat anything. So that's one pastime. And we know Mahaprabhu later came to Jagadananda and asked him, please, you cook for me. I can't take unless you take. And then finally Jagadananda let Mahaprabhu in, and he cooked. And then Mahaprabhu told him that I'm not going to take anything until you sit down and take with me. No, I'll take after you. And so Mahaprabhu took, and then Mahaprabhu went to go and take rest. He told Govinda, you make sure that Jagadananda takes. And finally, Jagadananda Pandit took some prasadam. On another occasion, Mahaprabhu, who was becoming very thin in his body out of separation from Krishna, he was sleeping just on the ground, as some people say, in some dry bark and things. And when the devotees saw that, they were very, very upset. So Jagadananda, he took some nice cloth, and he dyed it saffron colored, and then he filled it with some cotton, and he made a nice quilt and a pillow, a mattress for him, for Mahaprabhu. And he gave those things to Swarup Damodar Goswami. And he said, Swarup, you have to do a favor for me. You please make sure that Mahaprabhu uses these things to sleep on. I can't tolerate thinking about him sleeping on the ground anymore. It's very, very painful. So Swarup Damodar Goswami took those things from Jagadananda, and he gave them to Govinda to make the bed. And because the instruction was coming from Swarup Damodar Goswami, who was like the guru of everybody, Govinda didn't take permission from Mahaprabhu this time. He just made the bed. And when Mahaprabhu came and saw this bed was there, with saffron colored bed with nice pillow and things, and he saw Swarup Damodar standing with a serious face of Govinda, Mahaprabhu became very angry. And he said, Govinda, what is this? Who did this? What is this pillow and mattress? And then Govinda became frightened. And he said, my dear Lord, Jagadananda Pandit, he couldn't tolerate your discomfort and pain, so he requested you to take these things. And when Mahaprabhu heard the name of Jagadananda, then he hesitated, because he became a little frightened. And then Mahaprabhu spoke in a very strong voice and said, Govinda, take these out of here now. And then that time, Swarup Damodar Goswami, he took in some banana leaves, dried banana leaves, and he split them into fine pieces, and he made a mattress out of that. And he said, my Lord, you please at least accept this thing. So then Jagadananda Pandit's efforts won't be in vain. And so then Mahaprabhu, he said, how can I accept this? And then if you're going to do this, and you should just bring me a bed and put it on it. Jagadananda wants me to enjoy material happiness. He said, but I'm a sannyasi. I can't take these things. Huh? I'll be very shameful. I can't do this. So when Subdhamana Goswami heard all this and told Jagadananda, Jagadananda became very, very sad. And everybody was very sad, but they couldn't do anything. They were all helpless before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Kaviraj Goswami then gives this verse, Jagadananda, O Prabhu, Premachala Mate, Satyabhama, Krishna Yaiche Suni Bhagavate. That the exchanges, the Premachala Mate, the loving exchanges between Jagadananda Pandit and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they continued in this way. Satyabhama Krishna Jaite Shuni Bhagavati. Just like the exchanges between Satyabhama and Krishna in the Bhagavatam. And perhaps it's for this reason that many Vaishnavas identify Jagadananda Pandit with Satyabhama. We're going to speak about that in a minute. And then Subdhamana Goswami tore those banana leaves into very fine pieces and finally gave that to a bed for Mahaprabhu. So the point being that all these different pastimes in the Gambhira have a special purport. When the Lord wants to manifest pastimes, we often speak about this, Lord Balaram manifests himself personally as the Dham. When the Lord wants to enjoy Aishvarya, Mohi Leela, pastimes full of Aishvarya, then Balaram manifests as Vaikuntha. When the Lord wants to enjoy some pastimes from Nara Leela, which is also filled with some opulence, then Balaram manifests Dwarka, or he manifests Ayodhya. And then the Lord's associates come in corresponding forms to perfectly enhance those particular pastimes. So we're studying Mahaprabhu's Bhajan in the Gambhira, and each one of these different personalities that he's interacting with represent particular moods and represent particular aspects of Gaura Leela in the Gambhira, which are significant. And Jagadananda Pandit represents this principle of renunciation, and that even if the devotees around us don't want us to be renounced. A few days ago, I was speaking with a family. There was a mother and there was a little girl, and I asked them, what's the name of your daughter? And they said, oh, her name is Uma. And I told them, oh, do you know the meaning of the word Uma? And they said, no, it's a name for Parvati. That's all they knew. And I told them that in the Shiva Purana, there's a story about Parvati, how she started doing austerities to get Shiva as her husband. And when Parvati's mother saw that her darling little girl was doing austerities, what did she say? Uma, oh no, don't do this, Uma. And so that's how she became known as Uma. So sometimes the devotees, they become disturbed and they don't want us to do some kind of renunciation. But we learn from this particular pastime that to become eligible for Braj Ras, we have to purify our mind by intense renunciation, unalloyed devotion. Now that may sound a little incongruous when we contemplate other teachings of the Bhagavatam and our Goswamis. And let's look a little closer at that. In the Bhagavatam, famous verses there in the first canto, chapter 2, Vasudevi Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha Janit Yashivai Ragyam Gyanam Sharyada Hoitikam, that when someone renders bhakti to Lord Vasudeva, to Krishna, then janayat yashu vairagyam gyanam chayadahoitika, then knowledge and detachment from the world come automatically. It's an automatic fruit. So what then is the need for renunciation? And Srila Rupa Goswami describes in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that there is some utility, but he says it's only in the beginning. Jnana Vairagya Yo Bhakti Pravesh Ayo Payogita Isha Pratam Ameviti Nanga Tamuchitam Maya Yarube Chitta Katinya Hetu Praya Satam Mate Sukumara Sabhavayam Bhakti Stadi Turirita. So he says that this Jnana Vairagya, it's Bhakti Pravesh Upayogita. It's used in the beginning for entering into Bhakti. Pravesh means to enter into, to do some Bhakti yoga. It has some little utility in that regard. But he says that Ishat Pratam Amam Veti, it's good in the beginning, but you should understand na anga tam uchitam yayo, that they're not angas of bhakti. And this is a really important principle in bhakti. Don't think that by cultivating Gyan and Vairagya, we're going to get bhakti. In the 11th verse of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it says that Anyabhilasita shunyam jnana karmadi anabritam, that there should be no anyabhilas, there should be no nonsense. In jnana karmadi anabritam, I often comment on this from Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur's commentary, I believe it was, maybe Jiva, where he says that why does it say anyabhilasita shunyam in jnana karmadi anabritam? Why not jnana karmadi shunyatam? Why no jnana, no karma? And the explanation is given that there, in the beginning, some jnana and some...
Both of them as well. Oh, she's a younger one. Oh.
Whoever's got their mic on, please turn it off. Thank you. That in the beginning, there may be some utility for Gyan and Vairagya, but Jnana Vairagya Yadi, Adi means also Vanashram Dharma, Acharya's comment, and other different aspects. Those things shouldn't cover bhakti. Yeah. And they may cover bhakti in one of two ways. We often comment on this. They may cover bhakti in the sense that someone may think that Gyan or Vairagya or Vanashram, etc., are the goal. I'm doing bhakti so that I can get my proper position in Vanashram Dharma. That's one way that'll cover bhakti, avritam. But unavritam, they should not cover bhakti. The other way that they may cover bhakti is that someone may think that unless I do these things, then I can't get bhakti. So Rupa Goswami addresses this in the beginning, in the second chapter of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and he says that there is some utility in the beginning, but not anga. They're not angas of pure bhakti. And he says that those satjanas, they understand that these two, yarube chitta katinya hetu prayasatamate, they cause some hardening of the heart. Chitta katinya hetu. It's a cause of making the heart very hard. And we see that. I remember a story we sometimes tell. My first Sankirtan leader in Los Angeles, who when I joined, he'd been a devotee for like 10 years or something. He's a Prabhupada disciple. And he told me a little after I joined, he said, Bhakta Mark, he said, I've been a devotee for 10 years and I'm thinking maybe I should take sannyas. I should either take sannyas or maybe on the other hand, maybe I should get married. My father's offering me a job painting houses. So I'm not really sure which one I should do. And I'd just been in the temple for like a week. And I remember thinking to myself, this guy's nuts. what kind of question is that? Huh? And anyway, I remember a few weeks later, I was standing in front of the temple as a Sunday feast or something. And this friend of mine who was thinking maybe he should take sannyas or get married, he's not really sure. He came to the front of the temple, and there was a Mataji there, and he walked up to her, and he was standing in front of the temple, and the Mataji walked up to him, and she asked him, "Excuse me, Prabhu, have you seen such and such devotee?" And my friend didn't look at her and didn't say anything. So she looked a little confused. Did he hear what I said? And so she said, "Prabhu, I'm trying to find such and such devotee. Do you know where he's at?" And again, he wouldn't look at her, looking away, his head turned away. He said, "Mataji, do you see the color of this cloth?" And he held out some of his saffron colored cloth to her. And she looked very sad. I'll always remember the look on her face. And she said, "Yes, I see the color of that cloth." He said, "Do you know what this means?" And she said, "No, I don't know." He said, "It means I don't have to talk to you." So later, my friend, who was very fixed up, and he saw all Matajis as Maya Devis, which means he saw a lot of Maya Devis everywhere, because there's a lot of ladies in the LA temple at that time, still is. He ended up getting married, but he ended up marrying a Maya Devi, someone who wasn't a devotee. Actually, she was a follower of Rajneesh. So this is what happens. Yarubi chitta katinya hetu prayasitam mate. That this Gyan and Vairagya, they make the heart hard when it's cultivated on its own. So we want to understand then, in our context of our discussion today, the astonishing Vairagya, Adbhuta Vairagya, in the language of Lochan Das Thakur, in the beginning of Chaitanya Mangal, he uses that phrase, Adbhuta Vairagya, the astonishing renunciation of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We want to try to understand what is that Adbhuta Vairagya. He says, now Sukumara Sabhava, the nature of bhakti is that it's Sukumara Sabhava. It has this, it's very, very tender. And that bhakti is the cause of bhakti itself. That nothing else is the cause of bhakti. It's not that by practicing Vairagya or memorizing a lot of books and things that I just say a comment. Yes, he got married. That someone is going to develop bhakti. So in his commentary on this verse, Jiva Goswami, he explains very nicely. Let's bring this up on the screen here so you can see it. It's very beautiful. Tatra Cheshad Iti Bhakti Viroditam Tat Vecha Artaha Tachcha Patamam Evat Yan Avesha Parityagya Matrayate Upadiyate Tat Parityagena Jate Cha Bhakti Praveshitayor Akimchit Karatvat Tat Tad Bhavanaya Bhakti Vicheda Katvach Cha. He says that we should understand that Vairagya, which is contrary to bhakti, like the Vairagya of my friend, who saw all ladies as Maya Devis, that should also be Chaptvatyena Artha. That must be also rejected. And he said that's the meaning of the word Ishat, this verse, Ishat, in relationship to Vairagya. And again, he says that this verse is indicating that Jnana and Vairagya, they're only useful Tachcha pratamam evat anavesha parityagya. Anavesha, in the beginning, pratamam, in the beginning, to enter into bhakti, they have some use. But parityaga matrayate upadiyate, they have some utility, but only that to help us to give up attachment to other things. Tat parityagena. Parityagena, to be able to give up those things. But when someone begins to practice bhakti in a serious way, then Jnana and Vairagya become very, very insignificant. And he says that also this Jnana and Vairagya can distract someone from bhakti. And we see that in the case, an example I just gave of my friend, who not only became distracted, but he committed some offense. to the senior Mataji. And then he had to fall down from whatever position he thought that he was on of renunciation. So we don't worry about those things in and of themselves. We want to understand something about the renunciation of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. If we, from this verse in the first canto of the Bhagavatam, and from these verses in the beginning of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, if Gyan and Vairagya are not required, then what is the nature of the Vairagya of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? So let's look in the Bhagavatam and some commentaries on that verse. This is a beautiful verse my grandmas used to often quote, spoken by Krishna to Uddhava when he was sending Uddhava to Vrindavan to give a message to the gopis. And in this verse, he describes what is the quality, what is the nature of the gopis. And he's telling us to Uddhava because, Uddhava, you're used to religious people, and you think you're very religious, but you're in for a big surprise. Because as gopis at Vrindavan, there's something else. Taman manaska matprana mararte chapta daika. That the nature of these gopis, they've given up everything. They've given up chapta daika. They've given up absorption in their bodies. Mam eva daitam preshtam. And they've put me in their hearts. Now, I'm the only important person for them. Atmana manasa vitaha. They're just constantly meditating upon me. Yechatva loka dharmascha. They've given up loka dharma. They've given up the duty of being a proper housewife, being a proper daughter, and all these things. They've given up this religiosity, this dharma. Chadmart arte tan bibamyaha. And they've just completely focused themselves on me. My grandma used to comment on this, that this is mamana bhavamad bhakto. This is sarva dharmam parityagya. Krishna said that someone to come to me, they have to do these things. They have to think of me constantly, and they have to give up all types of religion. But who's the example of that is the gopis. But the problem with the gopis is, by nature, the word gopi comes from the same bij dhatu as gupta, or hidden. The word gopi means someone who hides themselves, who hides their feelings. So practically no one knew about the feelings of the gopis. And Krishna thought to himself that this is not good. I have to set some example. So I have to come myself. And so Krishna came to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Jiva Goswami comments on this. He quotes this verse from the second canto of the Bhagavatam, chapter 6. Bhoktripe sukha dukhanam purusham prakrite padam. That this is the nature of the Atma, that the Atma, or the self, is superior to material nature, and that Atma is a cause of enjoyment and suffering of the jiva. And then Jiva Goswami, in his Laghu Vaishnava Toshan commentary on this verse, he explains that this word madartha, it means that because all this material enjoyment is ultimately caused by the Atma, the gopis have become indifferent to the Atma. They become indifferent to their selves. Atma means the soul, but Atma also means the self of the body. And what is the cause of their sacrifice? What is the cause of their renunciation? Because they're thinking completely madeva daitam, priya manasagata. They're completely thinking of me as the most beloved. And they don't take any external objects as dear to themselves. They're just completely focused on me and Krishna. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also comments on this. In a similar way, the minds of the gopis are just completely fixed on me, and they've given up everything. They've given up daika. Chakta daika also means all their bodily connections, like attachment to their parents, their husbands and children, their parents, giving up eating and drinking and sleeping. This is a renunciation of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Krishna in the Bhagavatam, he says, Napariyeham nirabhadyasam. He tells the gopis that I don't know how to repay my debt to you. And therefore he tells them at the end of the verse, he says that let your pratiyatu sadhuna, let your own behavior be your glory. And that sadhana, or being a sadhu, of someone who's following some behavior, indicates Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Mahaprabhu is Krishna in the mood of the gopis. And he's come in the Gambhira, and Jagadananda Pandit is there and other devotees, and they want him to enjoy some comfortable life, but he can't do that. And his renunciation is not false. His renunciation is not rejected. These verses that we discussed from the first canto of the Bhagavatam and from the beginning of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu don't apply to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's renunciation. They apply to people like my friend in the Los Angeles temple who are trying to practice renunciation as a conscious choice. But for the gopis of Vrindavan, they don't even think of it because they've gone completely mad. And the depth of their madness is that they want to die. They don't even want to live anymore. My Guru Maharaj gave a lecture about this topic. I had the good fortune to be present at on the 18th of May in 1994 in Bhubaneswar. I'm going to read you a little bit from this lecture. It's a very astonishing thing. Very few people speak about the renunciation of the gopis. Very few people think about it. So we'll just read and discuss a little bit. It's kind of a long transcript. I don't want to kill everybody. But he speaks about, and I'll kind of paraphrase, you can read along. During the night of the Rasa dance, Krishna told the gopis that you've given up everything. Artojita loka bheda swanam. That's a verse earlier from the Rasa Lila section of the, I think, 33rd chapter of the 10th canto. That the gopis, you've given up loka dharma, veda dharma, samaj dharma, your family dharma, family ties, home, earth, kith and kin. You've given up everything for me, for Krishna. You've given up your loka dharma, your lajja, your shyness. And Guru Maharaj says it has a very deep purport. It's not an easy thing to give up everything. But some people do it, and they get some peace. Krishna says in the Gita, Chagat Shanti Anantaram. If someone gives up everything, they practice some renunciation and they get some peace. But the gopis weren't getting peace. He doesn't say that here, but the gopis, they didn't have any peace. They had complete anxiety. They weren't doing that renunciation for their own happiness. They were doing it for the happiness of Krishna. So he says, and what sort of tag, what sort of renunciation is it? Their renunciation is only for Krishna's happiness and pleasure, nothing for themselves. They didn't have a tinge of thought for themselves. They just simply gave up everything. And the gopis, they consider that if we give up everything, then Krishna will be happy. They don't think like that. That consideration wasn't even there. And they're not even thinking that they're giving up everything. Simply, they're so much in love with Krishna, Krishna Anurag. And Guru Maharaj comments how this is a symptom of Samatha Rati. There's three types of Rati, Sadharani, Samanjasa, and Samartha. Samartha Rati is the topmost. Sadharani means calm, and Samanjasa means something more. Sadharani Rati is like the Rati of Kubja. Its attraction. Kubja has Samanjasa Rati, is the Rati that the Mahishis or the queens of Dwarka have. And Samartha Rati is the Rati the gopis have toward Krishna. So that's the topmost attraction for Krishna. They're only thinking of Krishna's happiness and pleasure. It's not mixed with anything else. They're simply thinking of Krishna's pleasure. In the Adi Lila chapter 4, Guru Maharaj quotes this verse, Atma Sukha Duke Gopir Nahika Vichar, that the gopis Nahika Vichar, they're not considering their own Atma Sukha Duk, their own happiness or distress. Rather, Krishna Sukha Hetu, Cheshta Mano Vyavahar. Everything they have, all their physical and mental activities are directed toward Krishna's enjoyment. So Guru Maharaj goes on, he says that Krishna says, Mad Artam, you've given up everything for my pleasure. And he says that also has a deep purport. Krishna Swayam Bhagavan is Purna Brahma. He's completely full. So to give up everything for Krishna, it's not so impossible. if somebody gives up everything for Krishna, they won't get any loss, rather they'll get benefit. Krishna says famously, Sarva Dharmam Pratigamamikam Sharanam Braja Ahantam Sarva Papebhyo Moksha Yasham Masucha. He says that you should abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender to me. And then moksha yasam, sarva papebhyo moksha yasam. I'll deliver you from all pop. He doesn't say that you should give up all dharma, all religion. He says you should give up all sin. He says you should give up all religion. So Krishna gives us this type of assurance there. And we may have some motivation. He says, if I give up this thing, then in return I'll get this other thing. But the gopis, they weren't even thinking that. They weren't thinking whatsoever about what they're going to get in exchange for their renunciation. They weren't waiting for any assurance like that. They just wanted to please Krishna. That was their only desire. So the gopis' tyaga, the gopis' renunciation, is like that. The gopis simply want to please Krishna. And in their madness, they can't think about anything else. When they hear that Krishna is walking around in the forest barefooted, the gopis go completely mad, thinking, how is it possible Krishna's doing that? He's going to be hurt. So this renunciation of the gopis is a renunciation of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And to understand this properly, there's some opposition given from Jagadananda Pandit. And let's explore a little bit now about the identity of Jagadananda Pandit, and then we'll go ahead and finish this session. And trying again to understand what Jagadananda Pandit is contributing to Mahaprabhu's pastimes in the Gambhira. So let's look at this verse. This is Adi Lila chapter 10, text 21, which many devotees cite. Pandita Jagadananda Prabhupada Prana Roop Loke Kyata Yeno Satyabhama Rashvarup. That Jagadananda Pandit, who is the sixth branch of the Chaitanya tree, was celebrated as the life and soul of the Lord. Prabhupada Prana Roop. He's the very life and soul of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Loke Kyata came. Loke Kyata, Loke means that common people, or in this world, people were saying, Kyata Yeno Satyabhama Sarup, that he's a manifestation, he's the Sarup, he's the personification of Satyabhama. And Prabhupada comments on many dealings of Jagadananda Pandit with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Most importantly, he was the Lord's constant companion, and especially took part in all the pastimes of the Lord in the houses of Srivas Pandit and Chandrasekhar Acharya. So Jagadananda Pandit was an associate of Mahaprabhu in Navadvip Leela and also in Puri Leela. So in Kavi Karnapur, that's the general book that we turn to understand the identity of someone. Kavi Karnapur is written as Gauraganadesh Deepika. And here's what he has to say. Kenavantara Bedina Bedam Kurvanti Satvataha Satyabhama Prakasha P. Jagadananda Pandita. It's interesting how he words this. He says that the devotees, Bedina Bedam, that they make some distinctions, some beta, by noting different qualities in the devotees. And because of that, Satyabhama Prakasha P. Jagadananda Pandita, they considered that Jagadananda Pandit was a prakash, or a manifestation of Satyabhama. Now that's interesting because earlier in the same book, previously he said that Satyabhama had become Vishnu Priya. Sri Sanatana Mishra Yam Pura Satrajito Nipa Vishnu Priya Jaganmata Yet Kanya Bhusarupani. Sanatana Mishra was previously King Satyajit, who's the father of Satyabhama. His daughter Satyabhama became Vishnu Priya. So now it's a little confusing. Is Jagadananda Pandit Satyabhama? How is it then that Vishnu Priya is Satyabhama? So let's look a little further. Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur has written a book called the Bora Gana Swarup Tattva Chandrika, and he says a similar thing. Let's look at that. This is a rare book which was translated recently by a friend of ours. Satyabhama Prakasho Yam Jagadananda Pandita. Same expression, Satyabhama Prakash. That Jagadananda Pandit is a manifestation of Satyabhama. Now that's interesting because a little earlier he says Saraswati Parayasij Jagadananda Panditaha Indajunyo Shaka Bhutkata Varuja Bhupati. He says that Saraswati Purayasis Jagadananda Pandita, that personality who's Saraswati, the goddess of knowledge, she became Jagadananda Pandit. So these are different understandings of the position of Jagadananda Pandit. And he also gives a similar description about Vishnu Priya. He says that Vishnu Priya says that Rukmini Satyabhama ye stiti Krishna Priye Pura Lakshmi Vishnu Priye Jate Idan in Nata Sansaya, that Nata Sansaya, without any doubt. Rukmini and Satyabhama, they took birth as Lakshmi Priya and Vishnu Priya, Nata Sansaya. There's no doubt about that. So then how do we understand all this? Well, I don't want to try to claim that I have some insight, some special insight into this thing. But looking at it, we can see that Jagadananda Pandit is, some people say that Jagadananda Pandit some sattvata, some devotees who are in the mode of goodness, they say that they notice different qualities in devotees. So why is Kavi Karnapur using that kind of language, which is a little different than the language he uses for most of the verses? It seems significant to me. And perhaps he's indicating that this is the opinion of some people, which he says in some places too. Even he says in some places, my father thought like this, but I have a different opinion with my father, and I see in another way. Or some devotees, they think like this, I say this other thing. So he's respecting that. So Jagadananda Pandit had some qualities, at least like Satyabhama, in the sense that Satyabhama used to quarrel with Krishna, and Jagadananda Pandit also was quarreling sometimes with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So at least there's that similarity is there. Maybe there's some similar Shakti. But according to Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, he says that he also says that Jagadananda Pandit is a Prakash of Satyabhama, or an expansion, and a personal manifestation would be a better way to put it. But then he also says that he's Saraswati, the goddess of knowledge, who has a certain particular mood. And Saraswati is a manifestation of Lakshmi Devi. And it's interesting to note that Lakshmi Devi, she performs austerities because she wants to enter into Vrindavan, but she's not able to. And Saraswati is someone who's she's a goddess of knowledge. She knows about that. She understands about renunciation. So what I see in this person, I'd like to share with everybody here today, is that Jagadananda, what he's adding to Mahaprabhu's pastimes in the Gambhira is that he's creating a kind of tension in the sense that he doesn't like seeing Mahaprabhu performing these austerities, but he knows, he understands it's necessary, but still he can't cope with that. He can't tolerate that because of his love for Mahaprabhu. But Mahaprabhu is teaching us that even though someone so dear to you as Jagadananda Pandit is wanting us still, I'm not going to accept it. And he refused to accept the creature comforts that Jagadananda Pandit was trying to offer to him. And the nature of his renunciation is like the renunciation of the gopis, because he's Krishna trying to understand the mood of the gopis. And again, the gopis are not consciously performing some renunciation. It's not like my friend that they're thinking, oh, should I take sannyas? Should I be renounced? Should I not be renounced? They're just completely, totally absorbed in Krishna. And that renunciation is an external manifestation of their contemplation on Krishna. And therefore, that's the real purport of this verse in the second chapter of the first canto, Vasudevi Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janayat Yashaviragyam Gyanam Shamyada Hoitakam. That if someone simply performs bhakti, then all the renunciation and knowledge and everything else come automatically. And the example of that is the gopis of Vrindavan. They didn't consciously cultivate vairagya or knowledge, but those things come automatically. So these are some of the purports that I see in this discussion about Jagadananda Pandit and what he contributed to Mahaprabhu's Gambhira Leela. So I'm going to go ahead and stop there. And devotees have any reflections or comments or anything they want to share, we can go ahead with that. In our next session, I can just mention, we're planning on speaking something about the madness of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And this is in the Gambhira, and this is probably a subject which will take some time. So if anybody has any reflections or comments or anything, go ahead and share. It's nice to see everybody again here today. Krishna Balaram Prabhu. Yeah, Bani Biharni. We don't often get to see Bani Biharni. Siddha Hari Prabhu, would you like to share something?
Thank you, dear Prabhu. First of all, accept my pranams. Thank you, dear Prabhu, for speaking about Jagadananda Pandit. This is one of my favorite sections of CC, to hear about the quarrel between Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Jagadananda Pandit. They are so sweet to hear about how he behaves. And I thought the matter was resolved for all the future, that he is Satyabhama. But today you added some twist to it. So now I have to meditate more on Jagadananda Pandit. Who is he? Very interesting. And it's also interesting. Sorry, Prabhu. It's also interesting that Jagadananda Pandit, is also friends with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu from a very small age, as a childhood friend. In fact, I remember there's another Leela of Jagadananda Pandit and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu where he gets mad with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or something, and then he is hiding somewhere along the bank, and he doesn't eat for some time, and then Mahaprabhu goes to his home and brings him food and makes him eat, something like that. So it's interesting that they have a very long relationship, right, from childhood till the very end in Puri when he's taken sannyas. So it's a very long standing friendship.
Very beautiful, very intimate friendship. It's not something formal. It's nice. I wanted to offer a purport to your comments, if I can. So I think, I'm just telling the devotees, the reason why Siddha Hari Prabhu likes these particular pastimes of Jagadananda Pandit and Mahaprabhu is because he's living that. Siddha Hari a little bit. One of these guys who just like eats stuff that even a monkey probably wouldn't eat, just like raw fruits and vegetables and things. And all the devotees around him become disturbed, and they say, you have to stop. Siddha Hari Prabhu refuses.
Oh, anything, I'm learning from my dear friends Ujjwal Prabhu and Vana Viharni. And they are supremely renounced in their habits, and by their association, I'm also becoming some good qualities.
Well, good. You should, Ujjwal, you just heard what he just said. So you should see him.
Not true.
Go see him and at least some khichdi with some ghee in it and some paneer or something.
And Devu had a couple of questions also. First of all, really amazing class by Maharaj. I would like to hear that class later. Maybe you can send me, if possible, you can read the transcript of Guru Sai Maharaj, that lecture which you shared. That's amazing. And I was wondering, I have two questions. One was that you mentioned at the very beginning of the class that Jagadananda Pandit would go to different devotees' houses and he will narrate to them Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes. Now, I was thinking as a personal application, that they were feeling anguish from separation from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So when they will hear the pastimes, they will feel their hearts pain anguished. But when I hear the pastimes, because I'm not feeling separation from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, I don't feel that. Of course, in some sense, you can say, and maybe you can correct me, that because we haven't had association with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or Krishna for the longest time or forever, we do feel pain in the heart, and that's because we don't have them. So in a sense, we also are feeling similar anguish, but of a different nature, and that's why hearing pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is a balm for the heart. But I'm wondering, our experience of hearing katha is way much different than the experience of those devotees who are hearing pastimes from Jagadananda Pandit. So, right?
Yeah, they're on the platform of ecstatic love. At the same time, when you were speaking, I was thinking about how in our society, how popular it is to hear from Harisari Prabhu or different senior devotees about Srila Prabhupada. And especially the Prabhupada disciples love that because it is a balm for their heart. Where they feel like, again, they're associating with Srila Prabhupada to those pastimes. But it's also a balm for our hearts, because I know when I joined in Los Angeles in the temple in 1982, our Bhakti leader, Pushpadanta Prabhu, would take us to Cheviot Hills Park where Prabhupada was walking. He would take us to Venice Beach where Prabhupada was walking. And we would go to Prabhupada's quarters and see photos of Prabhupada and videos of Prabhupada in his quarters. And I was thinking, my God, man, I just missed this 5 years. In 6 years, I could have been here. And hearing those pastimes, it's a real balm to the heart. It's an important thing. So yeah, I also that struck me, that section how Jagadananda Pandit and how the devotees loved him, and how similarly if we go places, you can talk them, tell them different things. Ujjwala maybe goes places and said, "Did you hear that Siddhahari, that nonsense guy? He's doing this." And they're unhappy with him. But if you go and you praise Siddhahari, you speak about the glories of the devotees, then everybody loves you. And they feel very, very.
Now, but the point which I wanted you to comment on about was this: that we don't feel pain or separation from the Lord, but we do feel pain and separation in the heart because we are so much engrossed in the matter, and the soul is like kind of in a very painful situation, like kind of like a crunched in because of material nature pounding upon it for in eternal time, for the longest time. So, although the situation is different, but the result is the same, which is that it's a soothing balm to hear Mahaprabhu's pastimes. Is that correct? Can we say like that?
There's 4 types of separation. The 4 different types of separation you only begin to actually experience in relationship to Krishna is Purva Raga. The Purva Raga is that those feelings of separation before we actually meet the Lord. Now, actually, we can also experience the other types of separation from our Gurudev, who's a manifestation of Krishna. That's another thing also. So those things are there, and we see this, as we were just saying, that the devotees, in the case of Srila Prabhupada, in the case of your godbrothers, if you travel with your Guru Maharaj, and then you go to visit some godbrothers and godsisters who haven't had Guru Maharaj's association for some time, and you start telling them, Guru Maharaj did this, he did that, it's a balm for their heart. And this is our service. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, he said in one lecture, he said that the purpose of Gaudiya Vaishnavas is to ease the pain of the separation that the Brijvasis feel from Krishna. So how do we do that? We learn from the Gopis of Vrindavan. And the Gopis of Vrindavan, what are they doing? They're constantly coming to Radharani, and they're speaking to Radharani about Krishna's pastimes. Today we saw Krishna when he was milking the cow. He did this thing, and Krishna did this, and Krishna did that. And it eases the pain of separation that Radharani feels. And by doing that, we're serving Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Mahaprabhu's associates who are Brijvasis, who like to hear these pastimes. Is that helpful?
Yes, Prabhu, that's very helpful. Now I finally got it. Sorry, I was a little dumb to not get to comment the first time, but I get it now. Thank you. And then another thing I wanted to understand from you was that when Jagadananda, did so much hard work in bringing the bed and also the oil, and then later, Mahaprabhu didn't accept it. It's quite heartbreaking to read, how harshly he dealt with him. I was like, wow. But at the same time, as you're saying, Mahaprabhu is showing that how the true renunciation, what it looks like. So I was thinking something bringing closer to my heart, my place, that if we do some hard work for Krishna, and if sometimes it doesn't go right, after doing all the hard work, sometimes, things fail, you don't work too much, try so hard with one project, this thing, sometimes doesn't work. and we are left in a similar situation. But we are given the consolation that, oh, it doesn't matter. Krishna accepts the intent, so one doesn't have to worry about the work being finished or accomplished. At the same time, there is some different taste to finishing up the work or finishing up the task. So I'm trying to understand from you that, is it a good mentality, or maybe I think it's the wrong mentality to have, that we should always be looking for a result or a success in any project, versus some other mood where the mood should be that every time I'm doing a service, the whole service should be imbued with some kind of Krishna's remembrance and Krishna's grace, and not so much focus on the end result. Can you help me understand, Prabhu?
I want to offer everything that we do. When we chant japa, there's a samarpana, japa samarpana mantra. And we're offering this. I had to have my hand on my bead days. What is it? Krishna Chaitanya. Yeah. This samarpana mantra that we offer that. And before we cook, we should offer that to the Lord before we cook. Not that we start cooking and we're watching a movie while we cook and we're thinking about this thing and that thing. And then later on we offer it to Krishna. And we do that very purely. But in the beginning of our activity, we offer that. And then at the end of the activity, we offer. Just like when we enter into the temple room, what is the first thing that we do? We bow down and we chant the prayers to our Gurudev, because we're going to offer to Gurudev what we're going to do in the temple. When we rise up in the morning, the first thing we do, we offer obeisances to our Gurudev. Why do we do that? Because now I'm going to offer to him whatever I do during the day. And then at the end of the day, again, we offer obeisances to him. And we're offering everything to him. So sometimes devotees, they say, well, anyway, what can we do, Prabhu? We have to just depend on Krishna. And that's a difficult philosophy to understand. My Guru Maharaj, he would comment sometimes, he would say that if there's something which you have no control over, then you should accept that as Krishna's arrangement. And you should be peaceful with it. There's one story of some yatris who were crossing the Jamuna into Vrindavan. And the boat they were in started filling with water. And so all of the yatris were panicking, and they were taking little hats and whatever, and they were taking the water and dumping it out of the boat. Meanwhile, they saw a sadhu who was sitting on the boat, and he was doing just the opposite. With his komandalu, he was dipping it into the Jamuna and pouring the water into the boat. People said, man, what the hell is your, we're going to die. And he told them, I don't want to go against Krishna's arrangement. So what is Krishna's arrangement in that way? Is it Krishna's arrangement for the yatris to take the water out of the boat? Or is it Krishna's arrangement for the boat to sink and for everyone to die? They had different realizations. I'm not going to try to comment which one was correct. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati tells a similar story in this regard about a man who went to a fair and purchased some popcorn. And he was very eager to get to eat the popcorn. He was walking, all of a sudden a wind burst came and the popcorn went flying in the sky. So then he thought to himself, well, anyway, the popcorn's useless. I can't have any. So he called out, Govinda Bhog, Govinda Bhog. This is an offering for Govinda, at least thinking, at least I'll get some benefit in that way. And he criticized that mentality. So sometimes devotees have a kind of lackadaisical mentality that anyway, Prabhu, it's Krishna's arrangement. What can I do? Gurudev, I'm really sorry, but I couldn't fulfill your instruction because this thing or that thing happened. We should have an intense desire to satisfy the instruction of the Guru. Now, when you were speaking this, another complication came to my mind, which you didn't touch on, but I'd like to add. We learn from Upadeshamrita and from different Vaishnava literatures that when a Vaishnava offers us something with love, you have to accept it. And we see Srila Prabhupada, there's a famous picture of Prabhupada in Gujarat. We printed one of our magazines where he's sitting next to the deity of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Prabhupada has this funny clothes on. He has this like cowboy shirt on, which is 2 or 3 sizes too big for him. And those are some clothes the devotees made for him in America. They said, Prabhupada, we want to make a cowboy shirt for you and that. And Prabhupada accepted it. Although honestly, it looked a little ridiculous. But Prabhupada accepted it because it was offered with love from the devotees. Once at Prabhupada's Appearance Day, Govinda Dasi, I think it was his first birthday, first Vyas Puja program in ISKCON, they offered him a birthday cake with candles. And Prabhupada, he didn't know, well, what am I supposed to do with this, the candles and things? And they said, well, Prabhupada, you blow out the candles. And Prabhupada, like a small child, he did that because he was controlled by the love of the devotees. So if a devotee offers us something with love, we have to accept it. So then how do we understand this pastime? Jagadananda Pandit is taking this oil, which is prepared by Shivananda Singh, walking with it for hundreds of miles, very carefully bringing it to Jagannath Puri, offering it with great love through the hands of Govinda, and Mahaprabhu is refusing it. And similarly with the bed that Jagadananda Pandit made. We can see in both those cases that Mahaprabhu didn't completely reject it, but he turned it in a way that it might be successful. Initially with the oil, he said, well, you can offer this to Lord Jagannath in the temple and then your service. In that sense, he didn't refuse it. He was respecting that devotional offering of Jagadananda Pandit. And then secondly, with the bed, although he said, I can't accept this bed, but okay, I'll accept a bed, the principle, because you're offering this with so much love. Mahaprabhu is controlled by the love of his devotees. So that was my reflection on that. Okay?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Prabhu. I appreciate it.
Thank you for sitting. Anybody else want to share any reflections, questions, comments, anything?
Well, I just wanted to ask, when you quoted 1046:4, that's a beautiful verse. The commentary that you spliced in there of Jiva Goswami's, is that from Krama Sandarbha, or where is that from? I'm particularly interested in looking at that.
Laghu Vaishnav Toshini.
Laghu Vaishnav Toshini.
Yeah, no, I was working from the transcription given by the Gaudiya Grantha Mandir. You must be familiar with that. And they've included both. They kind of merged both together with it there. So I'm not really 100% sure. I am sure it's Laghu Vaishnav Toshini. The reason why I am sure is because it's the same as Brihad Vaishnav Toshini.
Yeah.
It's just commentary. It's exactly the same.
Fantastic. Thank you, Prabhu.
Those who don't know, Ujjwala Prabhu is a Sanskrit Pandit, or at least on his way to becoming one, studying Sanskrit.
With your blessings, we'll stay on our way.
Krishna, that's why he doesn't wear tilak when he comes to class either. or Vana Bihari. Vana, do you want to add anything?
Sure. I was thinking about these two different types of renunciation, and I was feeling like it's helpful to know the lower version, which hardens the heart and maybe creates some pride. And it's also helpful to know that real renunciation will come naturally by being absorbed in Krishna. But I'm just kind of curious about the in-between, how to look at it when you're...
Well, it's an interesting thing is the story I told, and I could give a number of other sick stories like that, perverted, strange stories of devotees with strange ideas of renunciation in ISKCON. They're not appropriate, but at the same time, we have renunciation in our society. We have 4 regulated principles. And for a lot of devotees, just doing those 4 regulated principles is not an easy task. It's a very big thing. So what is the necessity of it? If we turn to Upadeshamrita in the first verse, Vachavegam Manasukroda Vegam, which describes how a devotee should control his mind, his tongue, his belly, his genitals. Bhaktivinoda Thakur comments on that. He says that this verse is not speaking about bhakti. That's a fascinating thing because the whole book is about bhakti. He says, but this verse is speaking about a doorway to bhakti. There's some necessity. Rupa Goswami also speaks about this in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, that if we're too attached to material sense gratification, then bhakti can't arise in the heart. As Sri Dayananda Maharaj said in one lecture, he said it's like you have a garage, a one-car garage, and you go and you park this fancy truck in the garage. It has whistles and horns and all kinds of fancy parts. And there's no more room in the garage for anything else. So our heart is like that garage. And if we're parking all these material desires in it, then where's the hope for bhakti? So there's some necessity for some renunciation in the beginning, but our renunciation is really a practice of bhakti. We follow these four regulated principles simply because, not because those principles by themselves are bhakti. They're not angas of bhakti. It's not mentioned anywhere that following those four regulated principles are angas of bhakti. But we avoid those four things because they're going to be they're things which inhibit bhakti, or they get in the way of bhakti. So it'll help us. But we focus on the positive things. We focus on chanting the holy name, etc., as the means by which everything else will be overcome. And Rupa Goswami also in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu explains that sometimes a devotee may have material attachments and they can't even follow properly. But if they just keep chanting, then everything will be okay. And there's many statements like that also, a famous verse in the 11th canto, the Bhagavatam. What is it? Verses not coming to mind. That in the beginning someone has some attachments for hearing Hari Katha, but they're not able to control their senses. But Krishna says if they just keep thinking of me and keep trying, then eventually those things will. Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
It's good to see you guys. You look very happy.
Yeah, we're doing well.
Be nice to you. He's a sensitive guy. Hare Krishna. Anybody else with any reflections or comments or anything? Krishna Volunteer, would you want to add anything? Hemanti? Krishna Volunteer, I see your lips are moving, but we can't hear anything. If you're speaking to us, you need to unmute yourself. Actually, it shows that you're unmuted, but maybe the volume or something, I don't know. I can't hear you. Okay, anyway, anybody else with anything? Mukunda? Nice to see everybody. It's been a little while since we had these sessions.
It has, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Mm.
Just you mentioned Satyabhama, and it's intriguing to see the different types of moods and characters and personalities that Mahaprabhu has to actually deal with. And it's amazing to see how he actually reciprocates with each one of them. Like you've mentioned Satyabhama. I was also thinking of Rukmini. They're different natures. In that Rukmini, whenever she used to get angry with Krishna, she used to keep it within herself. She never used to bring it out. But Satyabhama, on the other hand, was a little feisty. She didn't hold back. She told Krishna what she had to tell Krishna. She vented her anger out. And similarly with Jagadananda Pandit, it was the same situation. It seems as if Mahaprabhu had done this simply to enhance that type of Leela between himself and Jagadananda Pandit. That anger, Mahaprabhu was looking forward to experiencing that again. So that's why he did that. So that's one of the, sort of thoughts I had as well. And also in terms of my own thinking here, I may be wrong, but it also seems that, because Jagadananda Pandit and them were exhibiting more of that Dwarika type of, relationship, and Mahaprabhu being in Gambhira, he was trying to exhibit, that deep Radha Bhav type of mood. And it's also one of the reasons I think I was hearing a lecture by a Guru Maharaj saying, do not disturb the mood of Gauranga. And so this is also probably the reason why Mahaprabhu got angry on those two occasions, because he's trying to go deep into this mood, Radha Bhav, and he's being disturbed, sort of disturbed, not in bad sense, but sort of disturbed by these different types of levels of Leelas, like Dwarika Leela and Vaikuntha Leela, all getting together, and Mahaprabhu's trying to reciprocate with each of that, So it's actually, in a way, it seems as if it's kind of disturbing the mood of Gauranga, That's just a realization, some sort of thought that I had. Also, I've been hearing a lecture by Guru Maharaj where he was saying that what is the difference between Sita Devi, the queens of Dwarika, and the gopis? He says that like Sita Devi and the queens of Dwarika, they want to take Krishna as their husband. They want to be his wife. So there's rules and regulations that come with it that they have to abide by. Whereas the gopis, they're leaving their houses in the middle of the night, leaving their husbands and children, and they're running into the forest to meet Krishna. The difference, there's no sort of rules or regulations there. It's just complete, pure, unadulterated, devotion towards Krishna. So, it was just reflecting on that while you were speaking.
Yeah. The Mahishis, they have this patitva. They love the Lord as their husband. With gopis is Ramatva, and there's Hoitakipriti. Very nice discussion going on. I was just thinking when you were talking how we should also understand that all of these pastimes are going on under the influence of Yoga Maya. Yoga Maya is orchestrating everything for particular reasons for the Lord to be able to taste certain moods and certain pastimes. And Jagadananda enhances the Lord's pastimes in a certain way. And also in his Gambhira Leela, Mahaprabhu is also teaching us as an Acharya how to do Nam Bhajan. And he's teaching that if we want this mood of Srimati Radharani, as Raghunath Das Goswami describes it in his Manasiksha, then we have to give up everything. Even we give up the worship of Lakshmi Narayan, and we're simply interested in Radha and Krishna. We see that in this pastime with Mahaprabhu. That's good. You been okay, Mukunda?
Yes, been okay, just busy with material activities all the time. Can't escape it.
Starting to warm up there?
Sorry, Prabhu?
Starting to warm up there?
Yes, it has. Yes, it's been quite hot this past few days. It's been good weather.
Here it's starting
but
to
but we're getting extremes. It's not the kind of heat that we used to experience before. It's extreme heat or extreme cold or extreme rain. It's just extremes we're getting these days.
South Africa is a very extreme place.
That too, yes.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu. Anybody else want to share anything? Krishna Kuni has something? And then,
I was struck by Prabhu's comment that Mahaprabhu was trying to be in the mood of Srimati Radharani. And here is Satyabhama. But Satyabhama is Satyabhama Radha.
all right, I didn't want to get into that.
Sorry about that. That's what.
I wouldn't agree with that. And that's where when devotees read Lalita Madhav and they try to just kind of like like if you're making a picture and you take a what you call it, a piece of plastic or something, you put it over another picture and you try to copy the thing. It doesn't work that way with Lalita Madhav and Srimad Bhagavatam and Gaura Lila all the time. The Bhagavatam speaks about Satyabhama, and that's Satyabhama. Rupa Goswami and Lalita Madhav says that Satyabhama, Radharani became Satyabhama, and is a whole particular pastime. But that pastime is not exactly the same pastime that's going on in Gambhira. Although the devotees who know our kathas something, we find that Lalita Madhav pastime in Nava Vrindavan in Jagannath Puri, but it doesn't exactly transpose perfectly because Jagadananda Pandit's mood is not the same exactly as Radharani. And it's a different thing Rupa Goswami is saying. I just keep it simple like that. Okay, anybody else? Chaitanya Prabhu, do you want to wrap up things? You been okay?
Yes, all good. Thank you very much, Prabhu. And it is good to be back in the sessions again. Thanks for giving us the time, and good to hear about all the preaching that you've been doing, or kathas that you've been doing. No, it was amazing to kind of hear this perspective on renunciation. I think it kind of took me back to the beginning days to a certain extent. I like the statement that says bhakti is tender by nature. And we're just coming out from the festival phases, and I remember the earlier days when devotees used to be so engrossed in the fasting aspects. I'm going to fast till midnight for Janmashtami, all those kind of elements that are there. And that's what they focused on. And they're forgetting about what we're really meant to be doing, thinking about what would please Krishna on his birthday, that type of activity. So that's why I appreciated the point around bhakti and renunciation. Renunciation comes automatically, because in essence, when you're working for Krishna, so to speak, you will end up giving up so many different things in natural accord. And also appreciated your point around some of the simplicity of how Prabhupada was accepting some of the offerings. It kind of reminded me of Lilamrita and the early days there as well, when, and if I hope I'm recalling it right, but when Prabhupada first, I think it was the Jagannath deities, and he asked the deities are here, so you should bring some offerings. And I think the devotees brought things like half a loaf of bread and candies and those kind of things. And again, he accepted it, and in time, he kind of guided them on how to readjust the thinking and what's proper and what's not proper, those kind of things that would be there. So just recalling some of those things.
Nice. My little reflection, what you just said too, I don't know if everybody here knows the sannyas mantra. Probably you don't. We did some research and I've come across the sannyas mantra. The sannyas mantra is actually a very simple mantra. It's a gopi mantra. And it's just a mantra where the sannyasi meditates on himself being a gopi. So that's our renunciation. Our renunciation, our sannyas in our line means gopi bhav. And just in the same way that if someone has a boyfriend or a girlfriend, if someone has a husband or a wife, they're married, that boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife indicates renunciation. It indicates I have this person. I only have one. I'm not going to run around with 5 or 6 or 8 other different girls or guys or something. But now I'm dedicating myself to this particular person. When we have a relationship of love, it indicates some kind of renunciation, and that's the renunciation of the gopis that Mahaprabhu was experiencing in Gambhira. All right, you guys still having blackouts down there?
Yes, Prabhu, though this weekend was good. We had some relief this weekend, but otherwise it's been pretty consistent. Hopefully next year sometime there will be some improvement.
Hope so. I hope we can see all you guys. We're looks like we're going to go to India. We're going to apply for a visa today or tomorrow. We don't know yet if they're going to accept it. We're going to try applying online, and we're hoping that we can be there in Puri by around the first week or so of November. Radhanath Maharaj's Yatra is coming, and we have some friends getting married in Govardhan. And Bana Bihar and Ujjwala are coming, so we want to see them. And we have a whole bunch of things going on. And maybe some of you guys from South Africa, anybody coming to go to India for Kartik?
No. No plans right now.
Yeah, no plans, Prabhuji. Not right now.
We'd like to see Krishna Balaram, maybe you and your wife can leave the boys with Chaitanya Prabhu or something. You can take care of them. Okay, so we'll go ahead and stop there. Thank you all very much. And as far as I know, is there any problem with next week, Krishna? I don't think there is, right? So we should be here next week. So, okay, thank you all very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Panchakalpadurubhishya.